Our Youth Perspective conversation at this hour looks into how young people, and the majority of what we see are young people, and why they are being used and how they're allowing themselves to be used, and why this continues to be a thing. Especially when we're looking into what we've experienced most recently with the violence that we see. Not who perpetrated it, but who was being used to have that conversation with us this morning. Already partially seated. Both our guests will be with us shortly, but for us to get into this conversation proper, Mary Kathomi is a political and governance analyst, and she joins us in the Situation Room this morning. Good morning.
Good morning.
Welcome, and thank you for being here. Karaoke Gonjiri is a national youth leader with UDA. He should be with us shortly for us to get into this conversation. But even as we get into it, we're going to start with today's proverb, with Dennis will share, and he'll tell you where that's from.
So today we are in Mauritius, a country, a population of 1.3 million people, huge in tourism, manufacturing, and considered to be a financial hub. Now, we talk about the tourism. One bird, unfortunately, in the 1600s was diminished completely by the Europeans. So it was hunted. We no longer have the dodo bird unless you read about it or look at the historical evidence that it once existed. The proverb this morning: a short person hangs his bag where his hand can reach. A short person hangs his bag where his hands can reach. How would you interpret it?
You do what you're able to do. Don't stretch too much. What is within your ability. Yeah, because if you're short, you're not going to put your bag too far away. It has to be within your reach. Yeah.
Well said.
Yeah.
I think even if they tried, they just can't. You can only reach where you can.
You can take a stool, but just work within your range. Yeah.
Well interpreted, Asante.
Yeah.
So let's start off this conversation and that why do you think, or what do we see? Because all of this plays in theory that has been studied and then practiced, and that we see towards governance. Why is it that certain people can be used to do certain things? For example, if goons are to be hired, we don't see that whomever hired them go into villages, cities, towns, and get older people to come into the street. Why? Why do you think, from a psychological perspective?
I think it's poverty. The poverty levels. That's why politicians will ensure people are poor. Economically challenged people are easily manipulated. And look, these are the young people. They are jobless, learned, desperate. They're just there in the villages. And most of the time, they make sure these young people are on drugs, wamevuta bangi, they're not in their senses when they do these things. Case an example, what happened in Homa Bay, extreme, you're not going to get a busy person involving themselves in violence in any way. So poverty works very well for politicians. Yeah.
And the same poverty is a social construct, in my opinion. That people call them leaders and politicians. I don't. I refer to them as our employees, and I think we need to put them in the right place because we pay them to do specific jobs. These employees, they work so hard to make sure that there are limitations for these young people. The economic endowment does not get to them. The economic, not empowerment. We've misused that word. But the economic liberation is not experienced by the young people. So there's sort of a reserve for energy at disposal for this, our employees, the politicians, that when the need arises, like now in the political campaigning season, they will tap into that reserve. They'll tap into the youth and say, you know what, you can come and help me mobilize. You can come and cast aspersions on my opponent. Are we people not woke enough to realize that if indeed poverty is a social construct, if indeed whatever you're doing is not in the interest of this politician, our own interest, in the interest of the politician, can we not convert that power and say that no, it is about time we start disagreeing with somebody who is not serving our interest? Because even if you're paid for the day, tomorrow you could be in hospital. Tomorrow, you could be dead. Tomorrow, you still be jobless. But that person goes back to office for another 5 years, earning a very high
salary.
Yeah.
We've lifted this you call them servants. They're actually supposed to be servants.
Yeah.
But we've elevated our politicians to the level of demigods, We no longer look at them as they're supposed to serve us. We serve them.
Right.
And when you talk to people out here in the streets, before, years back, everyone went to school to build a career, a profession. Now, every young person wants to be in politics to be rich. So being a politician is your road to richness. It's not your route to service. It ceased being a service job in this country. So when you look, and the problems that you're going through as a country right now, it never used to be this serious. But right now, goonism is really coming. It's a serious problem. No one is talking about it, but it's going to be a serious problem in 2027. Every single politician is building up a battalion of goons to use at disposal. Who are these people? Unemployed young people. They are building, they're collecting all machetes, guns, and everything. It's a very bad place we're getting ourselves as a country. And I don't know what are the numbers of joblessness in this country. People are jobless in this country. And very learned people. Parents work very hard to take these children into school.
Right.
Akishafika shule, they go back to the villages. What are they doing in those centers? Smoking, idling. And you know what happened to an idle mind? So, and now all the money is with the politicians. They've corrupted, they've stolen the CDFs, they've dealed, they're will dealing in government circles. They have all the money. And you can imagine when it's a survival for a human being, like they need to eat. They'll just do anything. They'll just do anything. And then there's the level also of programming, psychologically, they've programmed these people. And it's a big problem when you look at Nyanza. I've been into all sections of Nyanza. Politically, on political meetings.
Right.
And there is that community has been programmed for violence. You can actually attribute that to the low levels of voter turnout in Nyanza, the entire Nyanza. You can just not hold a political meeting anywhere. An MC has to allow you. Someone has to know. It's just not like any other part of the country. So for me, when you see that and the levels we've gotten to, the levels of poverty in this country, the amount of money in the hands of politicians, this is a catalyst for disaster in the happening.
I mean, as we talk about perpetuation of goonism in the country, insecurity getting into our politics, one asks the question then, has society, the Kenyan society, accepted or surrendered to the fact that goonism and insecurity is part and parcel of our politics? That when we see it happening, it's just another incident that happened. Because at the end of the day, you look at even conversations when you are having today, we've seen goonism before. It has been allowed, police and goons working hand in hand. So Kenyans are not surprised. It's just another day in office. Goonism has occurred. We will move on as if nothing happened. We've
been cooking a very dangerous meal, and it started in 2024. Gen Z demonstrations, where politicians paid up goons and they would walk with the police. People are saying these things, and the mind is conceptualizing what is happening. There's that subtle acceptance that, goons and police are working together. It's not mainstream, but people can see these things are happening. And there's that subtle language in the Kenyan political spheres that as a politician, kama una goons, kura itaenda. Kura inaibiwa. So what are politicians doing? Wanajipanga, And this is bad. It's been there, but I think it's now coming up and up and up. And people say it's mainstream, it's in courts, elections are not free and fair. So people are pushing to have free and fair elections. What do? Protect your vote. How are they protecting the vote? Apart from the people protecting the vote, people are building a battalion of goons to protect the vote. So there's always a reason. So if you ask me, is the failure of government, is the failure of the system that is bringing up a whole other line of created security, created protection, because the government is failing. People have lost faith in government, in institutions. The IEBC is not seen to be independent. It has to be seen to be independent in the eyes of the people. Right now, if you talk to so many Kenyans and ask them, is IEBC independent? Generally, it doesn't matter your political affiliation. Many will tell you, no, it's not independent. You know, how was, say, like the chairman brought in, everyone is talking, this guy didn't even apply for the job, is the chairman of IUBC. So that level of independence seems to be, we've a society has to exist in a place where law works, institutions work. The Kenyan society is losing all that. The constitution has just become like a document, like a PR document. So when we get into those places, we are disintegrating the society bit by bit by bit, and the politicians have not actually conceptualized how much this is a danger to this country.
To the country.
Yeah.
Now, so you have that on one side. On the other hand, you have the youthful uprising, where we are saying this is the moment for the youth to take charge of their country. This is the moment for the youth to even go for the electoral positions and participate actively in this discourse, dismissing the legacy politicians and ushering in a new birth for the country. When you look at the violence that is being perpetrated, the high cost of campaigning, it calls for a chest of funds that the youth do not have. And therefore, this may lead to a limitation of participation by qualified young people who can assume positions, but the virtue of the requirement, you're not able to mobilize goons and resources, you're not able to position yourself as an aspirant or a candidate. How do you bridge the gap as the youth for young people who want to give birth to new leadership, to new values, to upholding the rule of law? In existence of these circumstances, how do you give birth to the newness?
Civic education. We need a lot of civic education in this country. And a precedent was set by the Gen Z. You see the way the demonstrations in 2024 were mobilized. They were leaderless, they were tribeless, they were partyless. It was the first time in this country that we had months of demonstrations with no political leadership, with no center of power. But people woke up every day. Everyone was doing something small in their own spaces. A TikTok video, a graphic design, something. Everyone was doing something. And Kenyans took it upon themselves to educate the masses. People would interpret those small things even to vernacular language. So I think we've been told, we've been programmed, the millennials, the boomers, that, tunachagua serikali itatuongoza. Once we do that, we sort of tilt to our personal lives. And essentially, we don't have government right now. Government has failed the mandate of what a government is supposed to be. So for me, it is calling upon every single Kenyan to step into the space of doing small things in your society to bring change. And the biggest of them all is civic education. Look at it like this.
Right.
The Constitution has given people money to go to the streets. Just if you're unhappy, it's the people shall, Violence is not allowed. So if people get out and speak against an ill in society, that is protected in the Constitution. So when you see, and I'm sorry to say, I see democracy is actually a fallacy in Africa. Because how do we talk about bringing young people to democratic spaces, seeking elective positions, and what is the budget for a gubernatorial seat? Hundreds of millions. Where is that young man going to get? When you look at gubernatorial seat, look at even at the MCA seat right now, anahitaji pesa ngapi kuomba ile kiti. So democracy has been built to be that expensive, to be a reserve of a particular group of people. So it is us, the people, not to fit into that narrative. You need the money to do this. We need to be able even to vote for people just by what they believe in, not the money aspect of it. So it's a call for the entire country. It's a call for the people to come forth and save the country themselves.
Well, Wanjiru, it's been said that the government has failed on its mandate, thereby creating loopholes where civilians are now being reduced to seeking even private security in the name of goons. And among other challenges that are socially we are facing during this electoral cycle. Do you hold the same opinion that the mandate that should be discharged by the government, especially the institutions, the agencies, has been relegated to a level of dissatisfaction where Kenyans are feeling there are some measures we need to start taking ourselves? And in assuming those measures and responsibilities, now we are creating risk factors for the rest of us.
Thank you so much. Good morning, everyone.
Good morning.
And thank you for having me on SpiceFM. I think that, as you all know, that the primary responsibility of any government is to protect life and property. And it is not different for this administration. This administration has been there for 4 years now. And you remember in the past administrations, we had issues of terror attacks in the country. There is no government, no administration that has been able to contain that for the last 10 years, even during the Kibaki era. I believe that the issue of the culture of goonship in Kenya is not an issue that is only to be blamed on one political divide. I think it's a whole Kenya's political ecosystem problem, which requires everyone in whichever capacity that they are, when they champion and canvass in their politics, to know that we must tackle this issue together and find a solution to it. There is no provision in the law for the citizens themselves to come out and protect themselves. And where we always have a problem is getting the difference between the definition of who is a goon and who is a supporter. Because if you remember the time when we had the Gen Z protest, for instance, there were a lot of cases where the police were accused of victimizing the young people and even hurting them because they are coming out aggressively to make certain chants and even sometimes throw stones as police officers. And as citizens of this country, we must agree that we have first to accept that every other person in this country will not come out to protect anybody when the police and the security agencies decide to take action against this. When someone is arrested in this country, for instance, and they are taken to a police station because of issues of hooliganism, sometimes because of politics, you will find the whole civil society, the whole political class coming out, guns blazing, saying, you're jailing our people. These are citizens. And the other day, the president actually asked the Kenyans, and he spoke to parents. He asked parents, when we decide to deal decisively with these youths who are being used and arrest them, will you come out and say that these are our children and they should not be touched?
But Ngujiri, even while that is an argument that one would make, there is equally the aspect that the government itself is seen as the chief perpetrator and perpetuator of goonism in the country. Because if we still go back to 2024, the first few days of the protest were peaceful, we were leaderless and everything else. But as it progressed, we now saw individuals in civilian clothing with batons, not police officers, walking side by side by police officers. We saw Kenyans themselves coming out say, because police officers will not protect our businesses, we will take the responsibility of protecting our businesses because the police have failed to do that. So one then asks the question, is it an argument as well that government has failed to provide security to Wananchi?
The government is providing adequate security to Wananchi, and that is why we are having the conversation of how, as a people, we must deal with this goonship issue. But the challenge that I think our police officers face is because the issue of activism in Kenya and people politicizing everything has actually taken over and overshadowed the legitimate cause of dealing with goonism. And I agree. I come from the UDA party, for instance. There are politicians within the UDA party who have previously been seen to be working in a cohort with young people who have caused mayhem. The opposition also, parties, DCP, we have also seen politicians also being seen with young people, goons, in political rallies. Just the other day, even in Homa Bay, you saw James Orengo. So it is not an issue that is only unique to government. But, it starts with us accepting that this is a problem. And because it is a problem, let us differentiate between pointing fingers and actually coming out to offer solutions and making sure that everybody comes out and speaks against the culture of goonship in
Mary,
Kenya.
one would ask the question.
That's the challenge.
One asks this very simple question.
Yeah.
Whose responsibility is it to provide security? Whose responsibility is it to gather intelligence, that when I leave my house, when Kenyans have indicated their need to demonstrate that I'm able to go to my business and come back home, whose responsibility is it to provide security?
Definitely, that's the responsibility of the government. But I feel the UDA administration, it's so funny. They've never felt like they won the election. You guys have been in leadership for 4 years, but you don't behave like you actually won the election. You won the election to lead a country, to rule a country. And 4 years down the line, you don't feel like you actually won the election. You've been on a campaign trail for 4 years. You're behaving like you don't have the machineries of power. Case an example, All Saints Cathedral, politicians send goons right in the church, UDA politicians. When you say it's a problem in both sides, remember who has the power, more of the power to do this. Who has the machinery? Who has the police at their disposal? In the Homa Bay attacks that happened there last weekend, the police actually did their work. The police actually arrested the organizers of goonism before the Linda Mwananchi. The police was doing what they were supposed to do. Phone calls were made, the goons were released. The police are so demoralized. They actually want to do their work. I'm sure you're a Kenyan like me, you're a human being like me. When something is wrong, you know something is wrong. When a police officer is actually beaten to death by goons, it is wrong. So what am I trying to say? Let's stop doing PR. When things are bad, let's just accept things are bad. You, the ruling administration, you have the responsibility of ensuring there's security in the country. You have the responsibility of making sure there's the rule of law. And when it comes to the rule of law, everyone is supposed to follow the law. It doesn't matter where you come from. I think in Kenya we have a serious problem. We do not separate politics from governance. We must separate those two things. The administration is supposed to be rule as per the constitution. So who collects intelligence? Who is funded by the taxpayer to collect intelligence? This is the government. They know what is supposed to happen next week way in advance. They can stop it. They could even have stopped the Linda Mwananchi. Don't go there, things are thick. The government can give a declaration. The government can stop. But right now, it's murky. The government itself is so involved in the mayhem in this country. I know you want to blame the other side, but the government still has the responsibility of calling the country to order. They're not doing that. And this is a very bad precedent that we're finding ourselves in. We are headed to an election in 2027, and everything happening right now, we are like adding firewood to a fire that is so explosive. So what I would say, can the rulers, the government, the CSs, the interior security, the NIA, can people do what they're supposed to do? Can we just switch off from politics for a second?
And I guess the Cabinet Secretary for Interior has been very open about this matter. And he's actually asked politicians, because this is a politician's issue. It's not a UDA government's issue or opposition. It's a politician's issue. The whole political class has now to themselves, to whom much is given, much is expected. So each and every political party in Kenya must now come out and denounce this culture of goonism and direct its members to behave within the confines of the law. That is the position.
But as that could be the official position of the government, it is not just a political party's issue, because the violence is meted on civilians who are not even political party members. They may have attended the rallies, but you do know, and you'll agree with me, that there is also collateral damage, either of life or property. Therefore, this is a national security issue that is seeming to polarize our campaign terrain. And therefore, if it is not capped now, there is no telling on how far it can stretch. That's the fear Kenyans are having. We don't want to do fear mongering, because over and again you hear people saying, oh, we may have a 2007 moment. We are not going to have that, courtesy of Kenyans' commitment to peace accord, that we can have a peaceful electoral process. We can commit to that as Kenyans and denounce the violence and the perpetrators of the same. But as we work towards that, because I'm looking forward to a day where we Kenyans, the voters, let alone aspirants and candidates, we, the voters, will denounce and say, no, we are not coming to your rally if we don't agree with you. We are not going to come to your rally even if you pay us. I'm living for that day, and hopefully it happens within this year. But my question is this: why do you think there is a need for goonism, for violent mobilization today? Why do you think there is that need?
The same thing. Politicians are now retreating to that as a way of trying to mobilize their political support and protect themselves. But this is how I see it.
Yes.
Looking at 2024, when people came out to the streets,
Right.
there was a discussion on the force that the police can use to stop any mayhem. And you see, in the midst of such circumstances, we call it the circumstances of war, when you have a certain group, a vigilante group, coming out to cause mayhem. For instance, the burning of parliament.
And that was not a
midst-
vigilante group, though.
And in because those are not peaceful demonstrations. And in the midst, you have what you call the collateral damage. You know, people lose lives, unfortunately, and that is now blamed on the government, and the police carry that blame. So with that background and with that fear, sometimes even the police themselves would be afraid of coming out and using. You've seen demonstrations in countries like France. Police actually pin down people with a lot of force.
Yeah.
Here in Kenya, you have seen situations where even people who are demonstrating, given a space to do whatever they want to do, coming out and provoking the police officers. Police officers have to restrain themselves and act within the law. But because of that whole ecosystem where you don't know who does what, so police officers are sometimes also afraid of coming out and using that brutal force, which sometimes is legitimate, because some of these guys in this mayhem are criminals. They are not genuine people who come to a political rally. They've come there with their own selfish agendas, and they want to cause mayhem.
The people who
the what borders the police protecting everybody else and the police dealing with these criminals is where now that line has been blurred, and you know, people take personal responsibility these days. Even police officers, for instance, but whether by mistake or whatever, if they shoot a person, a criminal, for instance, that's a whole case. Okay? And they are the ones who will stand on the bus and they will answer those questions themselves. So, because of that background and the fear that there is going to be a lot of public outcry in how the police are dealing with these things, sometimes it's tricky for them, and as human beings, I personally understand them. That is why, as Kenyans, we must take our place and be responsible citizens, and also the political class must behave, and IEBC has all the tools that it has. The only way to pin down these politicians is to actually even nullify some of them if they will not heed to the electoral code of conduct.
I agree, actually. I agree with you that some of these individuals should not be allowed to run for office. But one thing is that instigated violence is not an accident. An accident is something that you cannot control. Now, when you see violence happening in the nature, somebody has made a conscious decision to do something, right? In a lot of cases, the violence that we see perpetuated in a political setting has often been pre-planned. It's not just in Kenya, it happens all over the world. It's a global phenomenon that it has been planned. There has been the acquisition of weaponry. There has been a thought process. There has been planning. There have been meetings. Things like that have happened. So it's not an accident. It was put together and in a lot of cases has been financed, right? Now, in this, the word gets out a lot of times. So in that case, when the violence has been perpetrated, Homa Bay is the biggest example that we can use because it's the most recent one. What you're saying, are you saying that police in this case would not come out to help, or to come out and say, let's not put roadblocks as early as 4 a.m. on the road for whatever reason? Let us not come out and try to protect people from these machete-wielding individuals because they were afraid for what Kenyans would offer in backlash if they came out?
The source of anarchy in Homa Bay, like I have told you, and that's a very dangerous ecosystem, even for a police officer. Let me give you a case scenario. There are two groups. One that is trying to ask to stop people from accessing that place, and another one that wants to access this place. And if you actually remember, in Odhaya, at that church, in that instance, do you know there were actually two groups? There was one that was trying to stop people from going to that church. And there is another one that is coming out and saying we have to go to this church. So what happens in such a scenario, in my own, because I'm not a police officer and I'm not an expert in those things, I think the police have a responsibility to deal with both of the groups in accordance with the law. But now, and it goes back to the same culture that we've had in this country of the police always carrying the blame. What would have the police done in a situation where two groups come and clash? They are using machetes and everything. So, that's I would call it, let me use the Swahili word, hawa ni wahuni.
Can I tell you what the police would do?
So in my own thinking, I think, if you ask me, the best way to deal with such scenarios, scenario one, either deploy the strong brutal force of the police force. Because somebody who comes to a meeting with a machete, that's someone who can...
That's a criminal.
That's a criminal.
It's a criminal.
That's
Yes.
not somebody who can do anything. They're
Yes,
criminal.
either do that, or number two, enforce it through the political heads that are leading these people, because they are known.
I'm going to go back to my question and hope we can get an answer. Are you saying that the police would not have gotten involved in Homa Bay because they were afraid of what public backlash would be?
No. I'm saying the police have a responsibility to stop whatever was happening.
And so they failed
in
on
a
that
normal scenario,
responsibility.
they would throw a tear gas
And
disperse
And disperse the crowds.
and disperse the crowds. But sometimes, because of the volatility of that place, could be dangerous. That's why I said the primary responsibility of the police would have been to repel these people and use the brutal force to pull them away.
There's something.
But we didn't see any of those
Very.
things happening.
So that we see the bigger picture.
Yeah.
Perhaps. Because we can keep on sometimes stewing ourselves on what the problem is. And we may not actually pin it down. But in my opinion, the question was, why is there need to deploy, mobilize, fund, budget for violence? Is it that we have an ideological deficit? Are we light on ideas where we can say, you Mary, you can come, go wherever, as the Constitution provides, mobilize and speak with the people, implore on them to be your followers, and then leave. Then the next person can come the following hour, the following day. Why is it that we don't have ideas that are strong enough to pull people towards us, that we feel we must defend our mediocrity, our incompetence, and use these now nonchalant measures?
I think we've become intolerant. Mm-hmm. If you ask me, case an example, Homa Bay is it's portrayed the lowest, the desperation of an, because let's just Kaluma was language inciting and giving instructions. It's in the public gallery. That's not hidden. So this is a respected politician in this locality. So the police are listening. Okay. There are allegations, actually, the guys were actually arrested before. The police do their work. By the way, the police do a very good job in this country.
Yeah.
The police actually informed and actually arrested the guy. The guy was in the Standard headline some days before. Phone calls were made, and the guy was released. So the police, who is working to do what it's supposed to do, is so demoralized and looks back. What do I do? And when you talk about, the police needs to use force, you have to remember who sits in these policy government offices. They are politicians. They're sitting in parliament. They're in committees. They're in these offices. So the hands of the police feel tight. Actually, they are not telling us the truth. The death toll in Homa Bay is high. They're not telling us the truth. It's pretty high. I have people that were there. The number of people who have died in Homa Bay, even today, they will not tell us the numbers. All that would have been avoided. And coming back to what you're saying, what is a democracy? Is whereby you sell your ideologies, he sells his ideologies, mtu anaenda mahali anataka. Freedom of choice, you choose where you want to be. But what are we witnessing in this country right now? Someone has panicked. Someone has desperately panicked. It's like when you're wooing a woman, you don't force the woman to be with you.
No.
You just use your language. Danganya ile utadanganya. Rusha mistari for that woman to come towards you. That's the way you woo a woman. If she comes to you, she comes. If she chooses, you don't kidnap. You don't take that woman by force. So to me, the levels of goonism in this country, it is desperation by some people. But what I would call upon Kenyans, it is because the power is always with the people. I have seen in Kiambu County, opponents come and give people money. When that person comes for a public meeting, go, boo, beat. Do you know vijana ufanya nini Kiambu? They take the money, wanakula lunch. Na hiyo pesa ilikuwa maybe ya bangi, ya pombe, but they just go do lunch for a week. Like the young people have to come to the point of making that conscious decision. We will take the money. We will not do what you want to do. We will not buy the pangas. We will not come and kill people. It has to be the people now who make that decision. And at the end of the day, we don't have 400 politicians in Kenya in power right now. They're less. We are millions of people. We have to make that conscious decision. We have to tell politicians no. We have to learn from Ol Karawe. You're given the money to do something, but you take the money and you face the politician and tell the politician, I will not do what you want me to do.
I mean, as we talk about the same, there is the aspect of personal responsibility. And why am I talking about personal responsibility? When you look at the security agencies that you have in the country, there are individuals who are heading these institutions, right? So let's go to Homa Bay, because that is the center of conversation. There are statements that were made by one Opondo Kaluma. And it's only recently that NCIC moved in. But that alone is intelligence that would have been picked and police deployed to quell the situation, because it was out in the public, because it happened days before Linda Mwananchi group went there. But you look at IG today taking command responsibility in ensuring that he deployed, that intelligence was there, that police officers were on the streets. We didn't see that. The Cabinet Secretary of Interior, as the person who's heading that department as well, should be taking personal responsibility for failing Kenyans, because what we've done over time as Kenyans is we look at a problem and not not force people to take responsibility for failing. You talk about France. France demonstrates almost every other new day. But France does not shoot people. Should they take responsibility? Should we see head of government calling his boys to order?
Well, it goes back to the same primary responsibility of the police, because it's the same conversation we are going back to. Police officers, and like you mentioned, the operational command lies in the office of the Inspector General, which is in charge of doing those operations. I guess because we live in this country and we know the history of what comes out of these meetings, I think because we want to seek solutions for our country, that going forward, I, as a person and as a young person, because I also walk around with young people, and I don't want the people that I work with to be labeled as goons, because they basically associate with me. But I have a responsibility that whenever we go to a political gathering, go to a political meeting, as a leader, young leader, as a youth leader, I have to make sure in my own capacity as a person, even before it gets to the level of the police coming in, to act responsibly and ensure that we canvass the normal way of persuasion and selling an agenda. And you came out with a very important point, that have we, or has the political class ran out of ideas, that now they want to use the culture of goonism to protect their politics?
And when you're rejected, you accept. There's also the aspect of rejection. I'm sorry to interrupt you. When you present your ideas to people and people reject you, it is okay to be rejected. You don't have to be accepted. So when you sell whatever you're selling to the people, if someone says no, you don't have to fight, That level of desperation is what is bringing in this goonism. So we are in an open space. Sell what you need to sell. If Kenyans tell you no, take it, go. So for me, is people who have been told no are not able to accept the no.
Well, because I speak for UDA, and UDA is actually a very peaceful political party, and we don't subscribe to the culture of goonism, by the way. For us, we believe in persuasion, and we believe that our track record will speak for itself. So we have no point, and we are not desperate to hire political mercenaries in the name of goons to go and assist us to manage our politics. We will speak to the people of Kenya, and we have always done that. Look at, by the way, UDA meetings. You will never hear of any issues of people being attacked or something. I do not deny that there are politicians who have been elected on UDA, who have been associated with certain things that we are not proud of. And in-house and within our circles, they have always been called out, and the party has its own internal mechanisms that it applies to deal with such scenarios. So it is the position of every political party as the primary vehicle that designs a way to chart a way for its members on how they want to engage on this issue. And as UDA, we have denounced and said we don't want the culture of goonism.
I have a burning question. Does UDA's track record include insecurity in the country?
No. In fact, there is no time for the last 15 years that this country has had a very secure time, like when the UDA party is in government.
Well, that can be debated.
Notwithstanding, and in this I mean, notwithstanding, some issues of mayhem here and there being caused, like the issue of goonism that we are talking about, which is actually one of the top priority that this government wants to tackle. But the government is responsible, and the government wants to tackle this issue without hurting or harming innocent young people who are seeking opportunities and jobs, and sometimes are victimized and labeled as goons. And I have to be careful.
Yes.
And I'm on record as having said, I do not want young people who come from, for instance, my own locality, who do not have opportunities, and we are trying to create those opportunities for them in our policies, to be victimized and labeled as goons because they are walking around with me because they are my supporters or we are doing politics with them. We have to have a very clear boundary between who a goon is, who a supporter is, who a young person who is just excited expressing their political rights.
Well, the challenge is, conflicting ideas or understanding of the same situation. Because the same UDA regime is the one that is the ruling regime, that is the government, bears the mandate, the obligation, the duty, the constitutional responsibility of provision of safety and security across the country. So the element of mayhem we are having is a pure indication of the failure of the government to secure its own people.
And I want to answer you straightforward, that the UD administration is keen on dealing with this culture of mayhem without hurting
its own people. Too late, because you have
and the government wants to do it in a way, and it doesn't have to be the usual way of applying very brutal force.
As a Kenyan.
And wait, because there are ways to deal with this issue. And the software part of it is to apply diplomacy and force the political class using the institutions that we have. I have said, IEBC, what is IEBC doing?
Well, there is institutional responsibility. I agree.
The only way to scare a politician to behave and to act within the confines of the law, it's not actually arresting them, but it's actually denying them a chance to participate in elections.
What we are saying, Wajiri, is that this should not be happening. If the government was responsible enough, we should not be having this conversation today about people being arrested, dying in police stations, about people going for a rally, not making it home, about policemen going to guard, provide security, deployed, and they don't go back home. Because you do understand, last weekend, we lost policemen who are Kenyans and family members to their families. We should not be having this conversation. Again, the same regime is being accused of maintaining poverty levels, directly or indirectly, such that now the youthful are available for such deployment of violence. Because it is argued, if people are economically empowered, and we have seen this in other democracies, you have very few people who would be willing to come out in the name of goonism or being hired to provide private security, which just wreaks havoc.
That's why I have said, and if you want me to go to what we are doing, so that we absorb young people and remove them from being used by politicians as tools of goonism, we are creating opportunities. There is no government.
Which ones?
Kamanya. There is no government.
Which opportunities?
There is no government that has at a go, released money to give to a record 120,000 young people below the age of 30. That is economic empowerment.
That's a Nyota fund you're referring to.
There is no government that has done that. There is no government that in the record of employment that has employed 100,000 teachers, and 50%, almost 50% of those people are young people.
So
there is no government that has employed 800,000 young people in the affordable housing project. Nobody has done that. It's not happened in history. So this government is actually making very practical steps.
Let's see how to ensure that we see the goonism would have reduced.
No, I'm just saying.
Okay,
it's a positive way of telling Kenyans
only result
that as a government,
whether it is positive,
we are working to ensure that the young people who are always used as tools of anarchy do not get that opportunity.
And yet it's still happening. Mary, go ahead.
As a Kenyan, you've said a lot of things. As a Kenyan with a vote, and I'm actually feeling we're not even supposed to be discussing if I'm making a decision between this party and this party. I'm analyzing a sitting government. You're actually representing government. So when you talk about UDA, for me, it is government with all the instruments of power to give security, to give intelligence, to give everything. You have failed terribly. It is the first time in the Kenyan history we had an invasion of parliament by the young people because your government didn't listen to the people. More than 60 people died in 2024. Young people shot, snipers in parliament shot, people were shot and died just because a government could not listen to the people. So I don't know when you're talking about security, what you're talking about. It is the first time since independence, 1963, we've had the highest number of kidnapping, people being taken without being produced in court. We've never had this level. So since Kenyatta's time, this Ruto administration has sunk the lowest. You have the instruments of power. And when you say you've created employment, I would really wish the people in the streets are not speaking the language you're speaking. Affordable housing. What was the priority of this country? Is it building slums and calling them affordable housing, or giving people education? How many young people are working in those houses? The young people have become more and more impoverished. The hustlers, wale mamambogas, wale watu wa pikipiki, they cannot sustain even businesses because the economy is strangled. So more and more people are poor. So please, let me explain to you something, my brother.
In less than a minute. Right.
Because you have the privilege that I do not have. You will go back to those people and tell them they have failed. Can they do anything in those 6 months? They have failed terribly in security, in job provision, in everything. They have failed terribly. Can they do something if there's anything?
Today, we have police officers
10 seconds,
who
please.
are in court because of the mistakes that they did. And the government has actually said, and it's evident, that it's not going to protect anybody who breaks the law. We have serving police officers interdicted, others in court. Because of such atrocities. So the UDA government will continue to deal with any person who breaks the law. Number two,
we don't have a time for number two. I'm sorry, our time has actually come to a head now. And because of this conversation, it's necessary for us, next time, come on time, and then we can have more of this conversation. Thank you both for being here, because these are obviously pertinent issues that need to continue being thrashed out for us to come to a place where there's a clear understanding.
Situation Room, the only way to start your day.